Welcome to the Arena Podcast, formerly Fourth and Three. I've rebranded everything on my website, Arena. All my curriculum is Arena team, Arena captains. And to be honest with you, ChatGPT said you got to change the name of your podcast. So now it is Inside the Arena. So Coach Lynn, a longtime good friend of mine, is our first official guest of the Arena Podcast. Welcome, Carlos from Crowley, Texas. We appreciate you being on, buddy.
I thank you for having me. I'm excited about today.
For anyone in Texas, you know who Coach Lynn is. We served on the Texas High School Coaches Association Board of Directors together, and I really had no idea whenever I got to be on the board how good of friends you'd become with people. We really became good friends. You just spend a lot of time together, and I miss those days. We were talking about your athletic director, Greg Williams. He was on the board. And for anyone who's not from Texas listening, you just need to understand Carlos Lynn is a big name in Texas, a huge man of integrity. And so I'll shut up now, Carlos. Tell us how long you've been coaching. Tell us your 30,000 foot view of about Carlos Lynn.
Well, it's crazy. I was talking to TRS the other day about some things. 31 years now. It's in my mind. It don't seem like it's been that long, but it has. It's still a labor of love for me. I'm so excited about being a high school football coach and doing it for this long has really proven to be so satisfying to me. I started back at Wilmer Hutchins High School, which is where I played football back in 1995. And I coached there for 3 years. And then I went to Cedar Hill when Coach Woods, who was my head football coach in high school, was the head coach at Cedar Hill. I came and coached under him. And when he left, Coach McGuire got the job. Joey McGuire got the job. And I became his DC in 2003. And I got my first opportunity to be a head coach in 2008 at Arlington Seguin. I think that's when we really started playing each other, when you was at Mesquite Poteet at that time. And when Joey left in 2017 to go be an assistant coach at Baylor, I got the head coaching job at Cedar Hill in 2017. And then my first year in Crowley was in 2023. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, my coaching career.
So a bunch of big schools, a bunch of great school districts, really. I texted Carlos and I said, hey, this podcast is about helping head coaches. I think that it should be boot camp for you. And you agreed. And boot camp's a big deal. In Texas, we're so lucky that we get the athletic period. And I'm going to just tell you my real quick boot camp story, Carlos. When I started coaching in 90, and probably in 92 or 93, I heard D.W. Rutledge talk about boot camp at Judson. And it was shocking. I grew up in a high school in East Texas and played at Louisiana Monroe. And bottom line is, I'd never heard of boot camp. I didn't remember any of my college teammates talking about boot camp. And when he talked about boot camp, I remember thinking, this is incredible. But a young assistant filed it away, became a head coach, and went, I don't remember what year it would have been, but we went to Cedar Hill and Joey McGuire was the head coach and just got to observe one day. And you were the DC. And I mean, I remember the day like it was yesterday. And I remember asking Coach McGuire about what is so special about boot camp. And he said, Randy, here's one way to put it. If we ever stopped doing boot camp, our former players at Cedar Hill would come back with torches and pitchforks, and they would storm the castle. They would not be happy. Explain to everyone why that would be the attitude. If y'all, and probably the same way in Crowley now, if y'all stop doing boot camp, why would that be so bad?
Well, boot camp is kind of a sort of a rite of passage almost. With our programs and the success that we've had with boot camp, we can virtually go back and point out things in the season that were boot camp related. And we were fortunate at Cedar Hill. Our first boot camp was in the spring of 2006, and our first state championship was in the fall of 2006.
Wow.
And a lot of the successes that we felt in 2005, we felt like we had a good ball club, but something was missing. An ingredient, when we lost a close first round game to Allen, and we just felt like something, our kids were crushed. We knew we had a good ball club, but we knew we had to do something different. And a lot of our off season was just a traditional type of off season. We got into this boot camp mindset. The kids, for whatever reason, they bought it a sinker. They were truly invested in it. They believed in it. And if you would ask anybody that was on those first teams or even anybody after that, any success that we had in football, somebody is going to bring up it was because of boot camp. So I just think the mentality that has been nurtured through boot camp leads and causes our programs to really, really buy in. When I came here to Crowley, when I went to Seguin, it was immediate success than what they had ever seen before. And boot camp had a real, real big play in that. And so I think it's just the gravitational pull of the buy-in and kids really, really sinking their teeth into it, which that's what makes boot camp really, really special.
Yeah, and as coaches, part of our job is sort of like mind games and convincing them, hey, we got the secret sauce. And boot camp is an easy sell that I would tell my guys at North Forney or wherever, hey, we're about the only one doing boot camp. So, okay, for the coaches that are listening, let's still stay in outline form here, but what time of the year do you do boot camp and how long is it?
Okay. We have what we call it 6 phases of the developmental season. We don't categorize everything as just off season. So as soon as the football season is over with and we collect gear, we get assigned lockers and all that kind of stuff. We have what we call an acclimation period. And that's just kind of get our kids mind right. After we come back from the Christmas holidays, we'll start our off-season period. And that's what we consider our bigger, faster, stronger phase of the developmental season. That's the physical development part. And the first week in February, we start boot camp. And we always kick off a week of boot camp orientation. That's straight up in the classroom, teaching the precepts and the concepts and the idea of boot camp and going over some of the strategic things that we want to accomplish for boot camp. And we'll try to do that from February up until whenever spring break is. A lot of times if we can get our kids to finish before spring break, that's a plus. We've had some teams that struggled in boot camp and we had to come back after spring break and do some things. So it's depending on what your measuring sticks are for success in boot camp, which allows it to give you a good barometer of how long you want to be in.
Yes. And man, I get so excited. So for you guys not in Texas, our spring breaks here are around mid-March. So that's kind of what you're thinking.
Mhm.
About a week of classroom and 4 to 5 weeks of boot camp.
Yes.
Guys, I know everyone listening to this can understand. If I live to be 100, I'm going to remember the years that we didn't make the playoffs. And luckily, we made the playoffs most years. But the years you don't make the playoffs or get beat in the first round, off season. But let me say this, Carlos. I love the power of words. I've never heard the term developmental season. I love it, buddy. I'm stealing it. And if I live to be 100, I'll never forget how tired I got a developmental season by the time we got to spring football, which would be into April. I mean, it is the grind. So, one of the
Absolutely.
great things about boot camp is it gives you a season that you can score points and grade. You're not just doing the stuff And the stuff's important. We got to get bigger, stronger, faster. But now boot camp becomes a competition. It's a thing right in the time where you need it the most.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is a really, I'll never forget this story either. In 2011, I'm at Mesquite Poteet, and we're playing in pretty much in Dallas proper. I mean, you can see the skyline, and I'm talking to a good friend before the game in warm-ups, and he asked me about boot camp because I was posting it and things like that, maybe the spring before, and I was telling him about it, and he said, Randy, I think the closer you are to the Dallas skyline, the less you need boot camp. And I remember thinking, I don't understand that. And by the way, he started doing boot camp. But tell me, what do you think about? Is there any coach who, in any situation, do you think wouldn't benefit from boot camp? I know it's a strange question, but
Man, I'm so sold on it, Coach Jackson. It's crazy. I've been in Cedar Hill. It's a one-horse town, and everything bleeds red, white, and black in Cedar Hill. I've been in Arlington Independent School District, 5 or 6 different high school, more of a Tarrant County
mm-hmm.
suburban type of school. And now I'm in Crowley. It's kind of rural type of, it's, I call it ghetto rural. You know what I mean? It's a little bit of inner city edge with a lot of country feel to it. And it's been across the board, no place that I've been that I didn't feel like that there was a need for boot camp. I think once you understand the premise of what boot camp brings to your program and the overall development of your program, you will never, once you do it, you will never do without it because of the things, we always talk about our vision, our values, and our standard of behavior. And Texas has the Texas way, and we're trying to promote these sportsmanships, values, and things of that nature. A lot of times, coaches really find it hard to carve out time to do that kind of stuff. We find it hard to really focus on character development, character conduct, and conversation. Those things, because we're about that ball. We want to get out there and get to football stuff. But what boot camp does, it allows you to cook those things inside of your program. Now you get to ultra laser focus on those things that when the ball comes out, a lot of times we don't get a chance to focus on that. And now we can correlate all of the things that we're learning in boot camp to the turf on the football field. So when we talk about our core values, discipline, accountability, selflessness, mental toughness, and understanding those definitions, those are things that they have to know by heart. They have to know those core values. They have to know the definition. You have to know what they mean. Now, when you say that on a Friday night, man, we got to live by our core values. Man, we're so undisciplined right now. What does discipline mean? Doing the vital things right, coach. So are we doing the vital things the correct way? This is why we're, not performing well or not executing well or whatever the case may be. I believe once you set the standard of boot camp and those kids know that we have to live by our core values, and we understand that our standard of behavior here at Crowley High School is execution, effort, and energy. Are we living by that? And not only are we living by those standards on the football field, are you living by those standards in the classroom? Are you executing in the classroom? Are you giving great effort in the classroom? Are you giving bad body language and not giving great energy in the classroom? The same thing at home. So all of the concepts, they overlap. And like I said, they're cooked inside of the boot camp program so that you don't have to do anything special to focus on character development or anything special
mm-hmm.
to focus on whatever it is that you feel like you're lacking in your program. Boot camp puts a spotlight on those things and it enhances those things and it allows you a period of time to really sink your teeth in to some of the deep things that you want your young men to gain from your program.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter how strong you are or fast you are. If you're undisciplined or don't play as a team, you're not going to win anyway.
Absolutely.
Before you can win a game, you got to avoid losing it.
Absolutely.
And boot camp, I was thinking, okay, what's one play I can talk about that would stress the importance of boot camp? And I think about 5 years ago in the AFC Championship game, to go to the Super Bowl, Kansas City Chief lines up off sides before the ball is snapped, and it cost them the game. And I don't remember anything else, but I remember saying, man, that guy needed boot camp. And I know it's a pro, but if that happened to us, that's what our coach's office would be talking about, is we're going to fix that in boot camp. Okay, so we've talked about it for a while. I know this podcast is designed for people to be able to use it tomorrow. Take some things tomorrow. So Coach Matter from Jonesboro, Arkansas wants to know, if he walked into the Crowley boot camp day one, what would he see?
Day one, I think the thing that you will see in boot camp, you alluded to it. And when I was at Cedar Hill, it was Longhorn speed. When I was at Seguin, it was Cougar speed. Now at Crowley, it's Eagle speed. We move at a different pace. We don't allow our kids to not have a sense of urgency in anything that we do. And the speed part sometimes is a misconception, because they actually think that we're maybe talking about a 40 time or somebody running fast in 100 or whatever. No, we're just talking about every kid moving as humanly fast as they possibly can. So if yours is a 5.5, I need to see you moving at a 5.5. Whatever your speed is, that's how I need to see you moving and approaching the day and approaching the drill. How you move really signifies how you're going to operate in that particular drill. You can tell when a drill is going to suck because your kids are lazing around. They barely getting there. You can read the bad body language. And we try to eliminate that in boot camp by making everything about eagle speed.
So I told this story to Carlos before we started this thing, but when I was at North Forney, someone, Michael Glaze, who was on Coach McGuire's staff at Cedar Hill, he wanted to come watch our boot camp because everybody does it a little different. And I was puffed up and prideful and could not wait for him to tell me how great our boot camp was when it was over. Like, man, I felt like we had, conquered boot camp. And I asked him what he thought, and he said it was okay, but I could tell he wanted to tell me something. And so I got it out of him. He said, Coach, you just didn't really move that fast. Oh, and it crushed me. I didn't really understand until he said that. And that's why you got to get people to come look under the hood and audit your program, because I would have never understood, even though I'd seen Cedar Hills boot camp. But he was right. We didn't have a sense of urgency. When a kid went from squat to spot to auxiliary, and it has to be different than a regular day, right? So if we're doing a regular weight day in January in Crowley, your kids are working hard, but in February in boot camp, they have more urgency in the weight room, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the hope and the goal is that carries over. And that's my big deal, is how do we, because, even though when boot camp is over, my address to the team is that it's never over.
Mm-hmm.
Because from this point on, our coaches are going to coach everything like boot camp. If you line up wrong, if you're reading the wrong key, if your stance is bad, whatever, that's all those things are boot camp concepts. They're boot camp principles. So once we graduate from boot camp, we really never graduate, because everything and the expectation is to operate just like boot camp.
So if you're not doing boot camp, here's what you cannot do. So I love scenarios. It's halftime of the Crowley North Crowley game, and both programs are really good. It's halftime in 2026, and Crowley has jumped off sides once. Crowley has had a late hit out of bounds. And the first thing Coach Lynn is going to say to his team at halftime is,
Man, we're not living up to our standards that we've set for ourselves in boot camp, because
yes.
those are undisciplined things. Those are things, those that is not the definition for us for discipline is doing the vital things right. We don't say the little things. We say the vital things, because if we say we're doing the little things right, we're dealing with high school teenagers. They really think it's a little thing. But if we say it's a vital thing, you lose a heart, you lose a lung. Those are vital organs. You die. When you don't operate in the vital things, you cannot survive. So that's the correlation to jumping outside or hitting somebody late out of bounds. Those are the things that you talk about that lose the game, because we're not operating at a high discipline clip.
You have taught me some good stuff, man, about the power of words, vital things. But when you say at halftime back into the locker room and you start talking about boot camp, I believe all 85 kids are shaking their head because you sold them on boot camp. They believe in boot camp and they're thinking to themselves, coach is right. We got to start playing like some guys that graduated from boot camp. And if you're just lifting your guys and getting them faster, then you're not doing it as good as you could be. I don't care what state you're in, if you don't have an off-season period, but if you're lifting them before school, you can steal some of this and have you a boot camp. I mean, boot camp is a thing. And one year when I was at North Forney, I asked my principal to buy t-shirts for all the teachers. And the first day of boot camp, all the teachers wore those t-shirts. So the whole school was in on boot camp. And I had a
Absolutely.
special principal. But that's how boot camp should be. It shouldn't just be, oh, on Friday, hey guys, we're starting boot camp tomorrow. Boot camp is, I mean, you have a winners and you're posting it. If there's televisions in the cafeteria, man, this squad won, or however you do it. All right, Carlos, tell us. I'll never forget this. It's 1992 again. I'm listening to D.W. Rutledge talk about boot camp, and he said there were 4 stations, I think, and one of them was the mat, one of them was jump rope, and he said, now guys, we're going to have 30 jump ropes, and 2 of them are going to be shorter. And our kids, if they say, Coach, my jump rope is too short, he's going to say, deal with it. That's life. That could be a penalty. That could be something. We guys got to, you got to get over it. And I thought, man, that is so good. Like maybe you grab the short rope, but you got to just figure it out. So how many stations do you have and what are they?
Well, we started out at Cedar Hill. We had the mats. I think the mats is kind of the staple of boot camp. We had the command weights,
Mm-hmm.
and then we had the speed ladder. And I had those same 3 at Arlington Seguin. When I came to Crowley, we continued the mats. We had the command weights, but we had some monkey bars. We had like some parallel bars, and we had a straight set of monkey bars, and we had a set of monkey bars that ride. And man, so we implemented a monkey bar station. And boy, they would come in and they rip the calluses on their hands, and we would buy them gloves. It was a tough man station. And it was real tough for the big boys, because a lot of them just didn't have the shoulder strength to hold themselves up. And we had like 5 or 6 tires. So if you drop down off the monkey bars, we had a little track that you had to run around with a tire over your head. We call those a halo. So you had to go do a halo and then get back in line. And now that we have all this construction, they tore down my monkey bar. So I had to come up with another station. So I wanted to make it functional this time. So we came up with something, and we call it spin the wheel. And what spin the wheel is just a little app. And you get an opportunity to put your stations on that app. And the kids, when they go to spin the wheel, they get in line. And the first guy in the line, he touches the coach's phone that's running that drill. And then the wheel spins. And so we have what we call our Robert Woods, which is our high school line drills that we did when Coach Woods was my coach. We have a gauntlet, which is just a county fair. It's about 3 or 4 stations that they rotate in, and then we have a halo station with those tires. So when they get to the spin the wheel, they don't know what they're going to do for the day. Depends on what happens when they spin that
Oh,
wheel. Great.
coach, that is so good. That's like sudden change. I mean, again,
Absolutely.
like we you just had to deal with it. And
Yes.
and I'm
Yes.
just gonna throw this one out there at maybe Plano East, but we got some telephone poles. And so
Mm,
we did those at North Forney too, and sort of the Navy SEAL telephone pole stuff. And we
yeah.
put about 6 kids on a pole, and it would be commands. So just for anybody listening, if you have access, I mean, you got to have a country parent who can find you some telephone poles, but those are really good too, Carlos. And let's talk about this. Those kids, when you said those kids' hands were messed up on the monkey bars, because I've dealt with that. If you're going to do boot camp, you better educate your parents.
Yeah.
It has to be a deal. Like again, I'm going to go back to those t-shirts on the first day. Boot camp is an event, and your parents have to know about it because let's face it, it's 2026. If their kids come home, their hands are all tore up and they don't know why, they're mad.
Right.
And so if your parents were good with that, you had some good ones. And I've never thought about this, but the people ask me every now and then, how do I interview to know whether I should take a job or not? Well, you got to find out if admin wants to win. But
Absolutely.
and let's just veer off here. If you were interviewing for a job, you got to find out if admin wants to win. Will the principal buy you boot camp T-shirts and things like that? But somehow you got to find out if your parents are going to go bonkers if their kids come home with blisters from the monkey bars. Because if
Right.
they are, that's not the place to be.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. You're
but
right.
it comes with education for sure. So here's how we scored boot camp, Carlos, and hard on manpower and stuff. But and then I want you to tell us how you score boot camp and how they get out of boot camp. But we had a clipboard with every station and we tracked mistakes. So everything was a command and like did I get body counts from you guys on command weights? So one guy's doing the weight and then the other guy's on one knee and he has to be on his right knee. It's got to be on this dot and he has to touch his chest to his other knee and say, one, sir, two, sir, three, sir. And you're all just looking. And if someone doesn't do a body count right, you just yell, mistake, matter. And somebody would mark it on a clipboard. And so at the end of the day, we'd count mistakes and we would post who had the least amount of mistakes. Hey, Metter had 3, Lynn had 5, Jackson had 79. And, it just kind of went that way. And the kids love anything that you track. And that's how we got out of boot camp was when our mistakes got less. But it was a score. Everybody in boot camp had a score every day, but again, you have to have a bunch of coaches for that. I do think you could use trainers or injured kids or whatever, but you could probably find somebody to mark mistakes if that's how you wanted to do it. But as everybody I've ever talked about boot camp, they have a different way of scoring. So how do y'all track it and know when it should be over?
Yeah, we do the scoring too. We have a sheet like this. It's like you said.
Okay.
This would have to be the spin the wheel one right here, but it'll have the different categories, the different mistakes that we track for that particular station. And what we do, Coach Mito was asking, what do we do when the kids don't meet the standard in a drill or in a group setting or whatever? We did push-ups and we didn't do full push-ups. We were in the front leaning rest position and all they had to do was break their elbows. They didn't have to go all the way down to their chest or whatever. But we were marking them for any and everything. So they would do quite a few of those break your elbow push-ups for any little thing not being in the proper eagle position, looking off, not looking straight ahead, whatever the case may be. And so how we tracked it, we tracked our mistakes by counting the times that we made them get up in push-up position. So if we said push-ups, ready, move, Randy Jackson had BCD. So if that was one of the deals, we would put a mark by their group. We were separated. We had the black group, the white group, and the purple group. So if red was in the purple group, that's a mark on a BCD. So every time we went down to push-up position, we put a mark down. So I had about 3 or 4 coaches to a station. So there was one coach that always did the mistakes. In some places, we had the managers to do the mistakes, but that's how we did that. So after like the first week or so, the kids have they create kind of a measuring stick for themselves because each group is different. You may have one group that's horrible with bad body language. Then you have a group that's great with that, so they don't get marked down for that. You may have one group that is great in knowing their core values. Then you have some groups that they struggle with it. So each group each year have different little deficiencies that you have to kind of keep in mind so that you can give them the right goal to measure so that they can get out. So this year, once we average everything out about a week or two into it, it looked like we were averaging around 70 or so mistakes a day. So I just gave them a number. I said, hey, if we can get under 100 mistakes a day, we can get out of boot camp. And then I threw in, but we got to have 100% of everybody in each group knowing their core values. So they could get under 100. And I was telling them, I said, what's that? They said 33 apiece. If each group just got 33 or less, so it gives them that measuring stick. But
Yes.
they still had those bozos that didn't know the core values. So they had to spend time sometimes in the group chats and on Zoom calls trying to coach their teammates to learn the core values. And that's, peer mentorship, peer mediation. All those things, like I said, it's just cooked into the boot camp.
Coach, yes. And your kids, your leaders will make sure the other kids don't fail. Guys, boot camp is unbelievable. I forgot to ask this, Carlos, and I've talked to so many people about boot camp, but we had an item of the day. Did we steal that from y'all?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
So here, I don't know who we got it from, of course, then, but so every day we'd have an item of the day. And one day it's a paper clip. So everyone had to bring a paper clip to developmental fades, they had to bring a paper clip. And so here's what'll happen is some kids aren't going to have a paper clip, but leaders are going to have 5 and they're going to pass them out. And the next day it's a pencil. And the next day it's a rubber band. And what happens is, man, they're communicating. They have their own little chat groups. Don't forget your rubber band. It's just an accountability thing
Absolutely.
that adds something to boot camp. And
Absolutely.
what I love seeing, though, I would see our leaders in the hallway passing out, hey, do you have a paper clip? And
Yeah.
it's just a little thing,
Yeah.
guys, you could
It's a
add to
little
boot
thing.
camp. I don't care if you have an athletic period or not, you can add that. And
Yeah.
then I sure know I got this from y'all, but we wore jocks in boot camp. And our players didn't understand it. And I would just say, because it's boot camp. And that's exactly what Joey McGuire, I'd asked Coach McGuire when he told me, I said, why do y'all wear jock straps? And I said, Coach, that's good enough for me. And it was hard to find them. And
Oh, yeah.
man, we would write their names on the jock straps. And so my first year to ever do boot camp, I had an ROTC guy, and he said, I asked him if he could help us with boot camp, and he said, Coach, here's what I can do for you. I can take charge of when they get dressed. Well, I didn't ask many questions, and oh my gosh. So he wouldn't let them talk. There was zero talking, and they had 60 seconds to get dressed. And y'all, here's what's great about this. You couldn't do that from December to April. They're going to get tired of it, but you can do it for 3 or 4 weeks. And so we would grade them. Are they dressed in 60 seconds? Are they shaved? Or whatever your thing is, you can do during boot camp to score them.
We had standardized dress at Cedar Hill, so you could only wear khaki pants with a red, black, or white polo shirt.
To
So
school. Yeah.
we use that to help enforce the dress code to make sure that you had to have a belt. You couldn't sag. You had the belt. The top of your butt crack couldn't be seen and all that kind of. Your shirt had to be tucked in, and we had red polo Monday, white polo Wednesday, black polo Friday. And when we got in our squad lines, before they got dressed for boot camp, they had to get in those squad lines in the gym so we could check their dress code. And the teachers were in on it too. So if we got an email that, so Coach Mater didn't have his red polo on Red Monday, those were consequences that they had to do. So those little checks and balances, however you decide to do them, you had the item of the day. We don't have dress code here, but we do have dress for success on Friday. And now they have to, in 2026, they're wearing slides and Crocs and all these other different things, beanies on their head. We don't do none of that on Dress for Success Day. So these are sometimes our kids get an opportunity. They wear suits and ties. They look real nice, and it separates them from the mainstream kids in the schools. Like you said, they text each other the night before. Don't forget, it's Dress for Success. Don't forget, somebody got some slides. I got an extra pair of shoes in my locker. So those are things that, like I said, are cooked in or baked into your boot camp.
We used to give our kids bonus points if they wore a tie any day, Monday through Friday during boot camp. If you wore a tie, you got a bonus point. They would wear them.
100% Dress for Success. I take a minus 25 off your total mistakes right off the
Yeah,
bat.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, there's so much stuff, man, to talk about before boot camp ever starts. So I'm really not a great interviewer because I'm reverse ordering here, but my coaches would draft captains of we really called them battalions. So let's say I had 8 coaches. Well, they're all going to draft 3 kids apiece, and that's their captains of their battalion. And then, guys, I don't want y'all to think that I'm the Grinch, but we would get in our indoor facility and we would draft in front of everybody. And so our starting running back, who maybe thought he was, man, when he didn't go to the 6th round, because boot camp's not about being a great athlete. It's about, as you all know by now, the little things. So we would draft kids and everybody know where they got drafted. Now, the last 20 kids, we would just put them in. I'd put them in somewhere because, I do know if somebody was drafted last, I'm the worst human in the world. I didn't let that happen. But how do y'all do anything like that with how you determine who's purple, white, and black?
Yeah, what I do is, it's to me, it's that, 10, 80, 10
Mm-hmm.
principle. I take the top 10, they're going to be my line leaders. They're going to be my line leader. I'm going to have 8 line leaders. The top, 24 kids that we got are going to be are going to be a line leader. And then we have the lower guys that may be lesser on the athletic side. There may be some, problem children, they got different issues. I spread those amongst the 3. So everybody going to have a top 10 percenter. Everybody going to have some bottom 10 percenters. And then everyone else in the middle, I just kind of spread them out.
So
Mm-hmm.
you assign the teams, which is really good too, but you're going to make sure they're even. So
Yes.
the winning team, what do you give them anything?
We kind of, it's incentive lace throughout,
Okay.
just arbitrary. It just depends on
Mm-hmm.
what we got going on, what kind of relationships we have in the community, things of that nature. We real good with our FCA, so a winning team may get some extra snacks
Yeah.
after,
Yeah.
after workouts or whatever the case may be. So it just kind of depends on what you have going that you can incentive lace
Yeah.
some of that success.
We used to print T-shirts that said "Boot Camp Champions," and the squad got that. And we would take their group picture and put it in the hallway. And guys, that's a big deal. Again, developmental phase from November or whenever you have to start it is too long. And boot camp really gives you that critical thing in there where you can compete. And okay, so I'm going to throw something a little harder at you, maybe, Carlos. I consult during the fall I probably had 6 schools this year, 1 college and 5 high schools, and I'm sort of an advanced scout for them. So I'll watch their opponent defense and I'll tell them who I think the worst player is. These are all my fast and wide clients, but hey, we got to double team this D lineman, and this kid's probably going to get NIL money, and this corner over here, we got to throw at him. But anyway, one school, I would even watch their practice, and they did not practice well. It was hard. Like they were lazy at practice. The O linemen and I'm watching the offense and it bothered me. So let's pretend you take over this school and we got to fix this effort. How do you fix a team? Now, we got to grade practice and we got to punish them for loafs. And you got to reward the ones who are going hard, but you got to figure it out. You can't just yell at a kid and get him to stop being lazy. You got to have a system. But let's transition to boot camp. If you inherited this program and you're watching practice film and you go, oh my, we got to fix their practice mentality. Tell me where your mind is going right now of how you would do it in boot camp.
Yeah. It's kind of what we alluded to about the Eagle speed. You know, First of all, in orientation, your boot camp orientation, you've done two phases of your developmental season, the acclimation period and the off season. So you know who the hard workers are. You know who the guys is going to give you bad body language. You know the guys that are lazy. You know the guys that are going to stay after and get some extra work done. So it's kind of your pre-assessment to what your team is going to need. And you kind of understand coming off the season some of the areas that you were deficient in that you kind of fell below the bar and not to your standard during the season. So you kind of go into boot camp with a preset idea based on your season and the two phases that you've already went through of what you're going to need in order to be successful. Every year is different. The things that we're going to talk about all of the time, we're going to talk about Eagle Juice, which is our energy and emotion. We're going to talk about Eagle Speed. So if it's lackadaisical effort, this one coach is going to talk about fanatical effort or giving maximum effort. So whatever those things that you see in your team that they are lacking, if you're a new coach and you go in and you got a team that's always in fighting, they cat fighting with each other, you need to talk about teamwork. You need to talk about unity. You need to talk about the brotherhood. Whatever it is that you see as deficient, you do that pre-assessment before boot camp, and then you start lining those things up for your orientation. In our orientation, every coach has 13 minutes. We do a 4-day. I talk the first day about everything boot camp, what to expect, how to dress, all the little things. And then the last 4 days, I get about 3 or 4 coaches a day to talk to them about arbitrary things that we feel like we need in order to be successful in our boot camp to carry over into the season. So that's when we would do that.
Do y'all ever do a walkthrough and sort of practice boot camp? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
when after we finish orientation, we do the walkthrough. And we'll go through every station. We'll go through all the commands. And when we transition, this is where you stand. This is how you stand. This is where you go. This is how we fall out of our groups, our squad lines. This is how we go into the command weights, count as team, whatever the case may be. So all of the procedures, that first week is really a
Yeah.
trial week. It's like
Yes.
pre-district. These don't count against you. So we might not even bring tally sheets in on that first week. We're just really teaching and training them how to just navigate through the stations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we definitely have a period to where we kind of get them acclimated to what's going on.
Now, I used to worry about this a little bit, not too much, but if you do a boot camp 4 weeks, you don't lift and you make your guys lift after school or do they make up the lifting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
our school is in so late. We in at 4:15. So everything that we do is in the evening. So they've been trained. But
Yeah.
we're gonna Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, we're gonna get our what we call a fifth quarter. We're gonna hit our fifth quarter workout. And then the kids that work, they'll come what we call sunrise. They'll come in the morning from 7:15 to 8:15 to get it in. But
Yeah.
between the sunrise and fifth quarter, somebody should be getting that workout. So we're definitely gonna get our heavy lifting in.
So here's the bottom line if you've never heard about boot camp or if you've never done a boot camp, come up with 3 or 4 stations and make them discipline oriented. Don't worry about getting them stronger or faster. See if they can listen and carry through with a command. And what Carlos has talked about this, the transitions have to be a certain way. Like we put them in single file line. I mean, everything has to be scripted, and there's just nothing to chance in boot camp. So we can't just go through exactly how Crowley does it, but just to give them a summary, Carlos, it would be okay, mats, which everybody kind of knows mats, but they're going to be command oriented mats, command weights, and then spin the wheel. And everything is going to be where coaches are watching to see if they're doing attention to detail, is what we used to say all the time. In fact, in boot camp, when a kid on a push up, when a kid went down, he'd say, attention to detail. And when he came up, he'd say, everything matters. And just boom, over and over and over. And just like you said, if they're not looking you in the eye, if they're not saying, sir, because you, I mean, I'm not saying don't hold everything accountable, but we're not hammering our kids for saying yes sir and no sir for November to April. We want them to and all, but you can hammer them in boot camp. All right. So, Carlos, this is a question that separates the good coaches from the bad coaches to the great coaches. Your left tackle, you can't live without him. He's going to get NIL money. He's bad at boot camp. I mean, he don't care about boot camp. He's probably a 3 or 4 star, and he don't care about boot camp. He ain't one of the dudes, but he's that guy. How you handling that situation?
Yeah, we've had some star players, or supposed to be 5 star, 4 star kind of kids. Early, if you're a new coach, it's gonna be a curve right there to get those kids to buy in. Once they've gone through it at least one time, is there's no kickback, because they understand that it is vitally important for us to go through boot camp. They actually start looking forward to it. And they know that our goal, we'll tell them at the beginning, my goal is to break you down to build you up. And they really embrace that mindset early to get them to buy in. It's almost a trial and error, coach. You might have to put your arm around them a little bit more. You might have to really pull some more coaches in, or call some guys from old school to come and talk to them about the benefit of boot camp, because when it's new, they just can't see it. They don't see the relevance. They don't understand it. But once they've gone through it, they understand that we cannot survive without boot camp. And that's the Kool-Aid that we want them to drink.
Yeah. And I used to tell them, I'm your school dad. I have your best interest at heart. I am trying to help you not just get NIL money, but man, if you'll stay with me and do boot camp and buy into this, then I'm gonna try to help you get NFL money. And
Absolutely.
if that doesn't work, and let's be honest, y'all, it doesn't always work. So here's how we did it, Carlos, and I'd love to hear how y'all did it. But we had boot camp and it ended about spring break, but we had a graduation. And man, I had a running back that signed with Nevada. He was pretty good. Well, after spring break, he ain't graduated. So we had about 8 or 9 kids that they had one coach and they had to do remedial boot camp. And you just weren't gonna half butt your way out of boot
Right.
camp. And I wasn't going to let a kid middle finger me. I'm not sure how to say it, but say, coach, I'm just going to do the bare minimum. I'm going to get through this, but I'm not, man, I told him, you will stay in remedial boot camp, man. You won't go through spring ball. So, I think you have to win.
Yeah.
But again, so do y'all, and you may do a better job than me. We didn't do a week in the classroom. We did 2 days in the classroom. So you may be doing it where you don't have that kid who's sort of challenging you.
Yeah.
But I was going to win. And if you did have a kid that challenged you, how would you do it?
We use the pressure of the team to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You may not give a flip about boot camp, but your brother next to you do. They care about it. Do you care about them? So we will use that as leverage in hopes that
Yeah.
if you don't care about yourself, at least you care enough about your teammates to follow through with it.
Okay. So, most important question of the day. This is what this podcast really, I want this to be. If Metter's deciding, man, we're going to do boot camp, what's the first thing he's got to not do with his team, but if a coach listening to this wants to plan a boot camp, what's the first thing they got to do? And maybe two or three things. What would be the top three things they got to do to plan them a boot camp?
Well, first of all, you got to get your coaches on board. You got to have a group of men, and they need to understand the concept of what you're doing and how it plays a vital role in the season. They got to be able to connect that, because when I got here, my corners coach, he wasn't sold. He wasn't sold on boot camp. He heard about it, but until he was able to see how every dot is connected to the season, it made it relevant. And I think if you make it relevant to the grass and that fake turf that we have to play on, then it's a whole lot easier for a coach to really conceptualize it and understand it, that everything does matter.
Everything matters. Man, I almost forgot to ask this question, Carlos. By the way, man, this has been awesome. But one time I had a coach tell me, Coach, we don't do boot camp. Every day is boot camp. And of course, I'm not going to argue with him. But what would you say? You know, your story about your corner coach kind of reminded me of this. What would you say to someone who said, we don't need boot camp. We're going to hold them accountable. We're going to do all this every day.
They don't want that life with me, because Coach Jackson, we kind of old school, and we feel like you can coach every play. We have too many coaches that coach their hands in their pockets. So if every day is boot camp, I need to see that in your coaching. If every day is boot camp, and that's why we said after boot camp, we coach it like boot camp.
Mm.
I don't care what it is, we're coaching it. We're coaching it. If they're supposed to be running out of the dressing room, they better be running. If they're supposed to be, in a 3-point stand with their hand across the thigh, it should be like that every single time. And I just, I don't know if you don't go through a clear delineation of what that looks like in a period of time, that a coach is even capable of really, 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 really grasping that concept or that idea of coaching like boot camp every single day.
No.
The kids have to be baptized and immersed in that in order for that to happen.
Well, you can't do anything from November to April or November to May that really replicates what we do in boot camp. And
Right.
so, y'all, listen, if you're anywhere ever near Crowley, Texas, I could hear you talk all day, man. Like it's just so easy to tell you're an elite coach. And
Man, I'm invested in it. I tell you what.
and if anyone wants to contact you and ask you about boot camp, I don't want you to get slammed, but would you be willing if they wanted to email you or something like
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I give them everything I got.
So go ahead. Well, I'll put your email in the chat, and feel free to
Okay.
email Coach Lynn. Man, you got some guys better today. You got me better. I understand. I'm never gonna say little things again. And I love that. But thank you so much, Carlos, for
It's my
Miss Better
pleasure.
today, man. And I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do for the coaches profession and what you do for kids. And I'm honored to call you a friend. It's from the heart.
And
Thank you.
likewise. Likewise.
All right, buddy. Tell Greg I said hello, and I'll see you. I'm going to coaching school this year, so I'll see you
Okay.
there for sure.
Okay.
All right, buddy.
Thank
See you,
you.
man.
Appreciate it. Thank you,
Thank
Coach
you.
Midor.